What's up, everyone? Mistaken Silence here, bringing you the very first, yes, you heard it right, the very first Phoenix in-game tutorial, where we go over what to use, who to use, when to use it, and sometimes just where to find the information that you need. Because let's be honest, there is tons and tons of information, and you just can't possibly remember it all. Well, for example, let's be transparent and let you know that I actually had to do some research on what I'm about to go over today because, well, back in the early 20s, I guess mid-20s, I was not that on top of my game. We'll do that. We're not on top of my game. I didn't really know much about the game. It wasn't until that point that I started really researching, checking online, looking at different content, trying to figure out what exactly I need to do to be better at my game. One of the things that I didn't know to do was to use a certain crew setup, and that's going to be Cadet Aurora, Cadet McCoy, and Chen. Why do I need to use these? That's a good question. Why do I need to use these particular officers? Well, you know what? That's because I didn't have Pike Moreau to match up with Chen or Talon. And if you don't have Pike and Moreau, well, you know what? You can still do some really great hostile grinding and really get through those events faster than you would be using other types of crews. Today, we're going to take a look at what exactly those crews can do for you and why they're important to utilize and to upgrade as soon as possible. Before we dive too deep into the actual crew setups themselves, let's talk about where to find this information that I'm going to be going over today. One of the main resources that people throughout the game use is LCARs. Now, LCARs can be a tad bit intimidating, especially if you don't use it a lot. There are different commands you have to type in, but it can tell you all sorts of things from how much I need to save up for this, or what materials require this, or what do I need to upgrade to this. It's a trial and error type thing. The more you use it, the better you are going to be at finding what it is you're looking for. But let's give a shout out to CodeMonkey, our very own CodeMonkey, for making this information extremely accessible within our Discord server under the database channel. The Cadet database, you're going to be able to find all of this information I'm going over today. Maybe not the actual percentages and things like that for the abilities, but as far as the actual setups, I actually went to his database to find this because, well, like I said earlier, I didn't use this. By time I understood what this crew did, I was already lucky enough to have a lucky pull of Pike. Moreau took quite a bit longer. She was very elusive for me, but again, it wasn't until my mid to late 20s that I actually started understanding how to play the game and what it is I needed to do. So let's talk about the captain of this ship. It's going to be Cadet Aurora. If you look, her captain maneuver, which is extremely important in this case, Cadet Aurora decreases the weapon damage of the opponent's ship by 15%. Now, you need to remember that because it's going to come into play when we look at Cadet McCoy's ability. Her officer ability is going to be Cadet Aurora increases the shield health of the ship by 14%. So that's helping your ship whenever you fight the opponent, or in this case, the hostile, the red Dorito that you're going to be going after. Let's take a look at next Cadet McCoy. Now, we're not going to be looking at his captain ability because, well, we're not using him as captain. He's just going to be an officer on the bridge. His officer ability during combat, Cadet McCoy increases the effectiveness of the captain maneuver by 12%. So he's having a direct role on what the captain maneuver of your ship is. So in this case, like we said with Cadet Aurora, she's going to be decreasing the weapon damage of the opponent's ship by 15%. So you're taking the effectiveness of her ability, and that's going to be impacting what you do to the ship that you're fighting. Now, in this case, we're going to be fighting explorers and battleships and traders. And the example I'm going to be giving is actually going to be explorers, just because there's an abundance of them and it's easy to show you. But if we take a look at Chen's officer ability, Energy Absorber. If the opponent is a hostile, aka red triangle that we're going to be going after so many times during so many of these events, Chen decreases the damage done by its energy weapons by 30%. And this is why you want to use Chen when you're going against your explorers, which is all energy weapons, your battleships, which the majority of the weapons on battleships are going to be energy weapons, and generally your energy weapons do not have to recharge more than one round. So you're going to be hit with those more, which is why you want to decrease that damage more. And then your traders, they're going to be using the energy weapons as well. Let's go ahead and look at this crew in action. Now, I'm going to be using my Kumari. The reasoning for this is because the Kumari, at least for me, carried me through my mid-20s. I actually did not get a Mayflower. I managed to carry that all the way through until I had my Saladin. So, you can do that. You can get your, your first faction ship. You can skip it. It's up to you. Personally, I didn't build a Mayflower till I got my jellyfish at like level 39. And I did that so I could scrap it, tier it up, scrap it, and use those components and materials for my jellyfish. But the Kumari is a ship that for me was a serious workhorse, and I was able to use it for many, many, many levels. Now we're going to be going to Mimpa, which is a warp 39 area. Now your Kumari is not going to go that far, but due to some warp research that I have at this level, I can. But with this handy dandy new, discovery, you could actually use that to get there as well. So we're going to go ahead and hit 3 level 37 Klingon explorers. Now we started with 380 hull health. We get to the last one, the last of the 3. We're still at 334,000 hull health. Now we're hitting 865,000, almost 866,000 strength explorers with my 702,000 Kumari. And I still have 334,000 hull health. Why is this possible? Well, again, you have Chen taking 30% energy damage dealt by the hostiles. She's cutting that right off the top there. Then you've got Uhura's 15% the opponent ship damage, her captain maneuver. 14% added to shield health, so that shield's continuing to build back up faster. And then there's Cadet McCoy. Remember, he is adding 12% to the effectiveness of Aurora's captain maneuver. So such a huge impact, and this is going to be your vital hostile grinding crew until you get Pike and Moreau. Now Pike and Moreau, that's a totally different beast, and we'll do a segment on them later, but not today. So let's talk about Chen's counterpart, and that is Talon. Talon is who you're going to use when you're fighting interceptors. So you better believe when it's Swarm Sunday, I'm going to be using Talon on my bridge, whether I'm using an Enterprise, a Saladin, an Augur, a Franklin. It doesn't matter. She's going to be on my bridge. And why is that? Well, because I told you earlier, interceptors are going to be using kinetic damage against you. Their largest weapon, and the weapons that do the most damage, is going to be their kinetic weapons. So Talon's officer ability, if the opponent is a hostile, Talon decreases the damage done by its kinetic weapons by 20%. So very similar to Chen, except for the fact, again, she's taking that damage away from the kinetic weapons. So whenever you put her with your Cadet Uhura, Cadet McCoy, you're going to be taking those into your swarm systems. You're going to be taking them to systems where there's interceptors. And that's where you're going to utilize her the most. I'm not going to show you a video of me grinding hostiles with Talon because it really is the same thing as I did with Chen. Except you might not get as many in simply for the fact that she's only taking away 20% versus 30%. Okay, so another thing to think about when you are grinding hostiles is what ship you're using and what ship you're hitting. So if you haven't heard of the combat triangle, basically what that is it tells you what ship has advantage over what ship. So I'll go ahead and go through that with you. The battleships are going to have advantages over the explorers. So when you ever use a battleship against an explorer, you're actually going to do better in that fight than if you were using an interceptor against an explorer. Because if you look at the combat triangle, the explorers actually have combat advantage over the interceptors. And then the interceptors have combat advantage over the battleships. So whenever you're grinding your hostiles, and so let's say I'm going to go grind explorers, I'm using my Cadet Eora, my Cadet McCoy, and my, Chen. If I have a battleship, assuming it's strong enough, that's what I want to use, because the battleship is already going to have combat advantage over the explorer before I ever even put the officers into play. So keep that in mind. Also keep that in mind whenever there's PvP going on. If you have an opponent who, is 700,000 strength, and this opponent over here is also 700,000 strength, but one is an interceptor and one is a battleship, and you're in an explorer, well, you want to go after that interceptor because you already have the combat advantage. That battleship, whenever you hit it, you're going to have less chance of beating it than you are the interceptor. So something to think about. I know we get over a lot. You can always contact me through the game, through Discord. Again, you can always take a look at the Cadet database. Again, we're going to give some props here to CodeMonkey for putting that together. But really, there's tons of resources online. There's different content creators. I'm not specifically a content creator, but, I like to think that I'm cooler than most of them. But hey, anyway, so I appreciate you all listening. I hope that this provided you some information. This is the very first, as I mentioned, the very first one that I put together. So if you have any critiques, anything you think I could do better, or anything you liked that you would like to see more of, please let me know. And as always, please, please, please do your part in doing the helps, doing the events, Apex Outlaw, Crucible of War, things like that. These are where the skills you learn today are going to come into play, and where we can see the most, the most increase in our numbers by taking what you learned and applying it. I also wanted to add, from myself and from the council, thank you so much for what you do. We truly, truly appreciate you as a team member. You're part of our family. And speaking of family, always take care of yourself and your family first. Remember, real life comes before the game. Last but not least, for the love of all things, please remember to always shield. As they say in the game, shield or share.